And welcome to another episode of the Bandit Room. My name is Charles. I'm joined here in the studio today by Mr. Caleb.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Our special guest sitting across the table from me is Mr. Osiris Rain.
Great to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. Aggie is notably absent again this week.
Just really messing up his record here.
Really messing up the record. You're looking pretty solid with your perfect attendance record so far, Caleb. You're looking like you're going to be in the lead with that. So, Osiris Rain. It's a powerful name. It's an intriguing name. Is it your real name?
It is my real name.
It is your real name?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. Hippie parents.
Hippie parents, okay. What is it? What is the origin of Osiris? It's an Egyptian god?
The Egyptian god of the underworld.
Of the underworld.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know. Positive vibes abound, as one does.
As one does. Very nice. Yeah, so tell us about yourself. You're currently working on a mural in Rock Hill. That's one of the things we'd love to talk to you about. How'd you get into the field of working in murals like you're doing?
I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
My background is in more traditional academic painting, but I also have a background in high steel rigging, concert rigging, and as a grip and high steel rigger and scenic painter for the film and television industry. So that's where I was when I did my first mural, was doing for Shots Fired. And
where was that?
That was up in Mooresville.
Okay.
We may have filmed some down here. I can't remember which movies we shot, but I know we filmed in Rock Hill some.
Interesting.
But I'm no longer in the union, so
I
can't remember.
Okay.
But when our last governor, Pat McCrory, sold our film incentives down to Atlanta, and I do not joke when I say sold them out. I didn't want to move to Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I took my skill set from working in the television industry and just jumped ship and started painting murals from there. And I've been lucky enough that they took off.
Yeah.
And it's been full time for the last 6 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're really at the right place at the right time for an industry that seems to have exploded in the past decade.
Yeah, it has, especially in the Charlotte area, and I like seeing it bleeding down into Rock Hill. Got a phenomenal scene that's building here. And between Rock Hill and Charlotte, these are great localities because a lot of Northerners are moving down for the same jobs but a lower cost of living, and they really want the aesthetic that they have left from these northern cities that are very art-centric and street-savvy centric.
Sure. Now, you said you got your start in academic painting. Tell us a little bit about your art education. Where did you start?
I'd say it first started on our homestead in Waxhaw, North Carolina. My father was an illustrator.
Okay.
He was retired since I remember, but because he's got MS.
Gotcha.
But his work influenced me to want to become an artist initially.
Gotcha.
But from there, I was a bit of a wild child. I ended up studying at Northwest School of the Arts in Charlotte during half of a teen year, from which I dropped out of high school after being accepted into the Angel Academy of Art in Florence, Italy.
Wow.
So I moved overseas, got into plenty of trouble in Italy because that's what you do when you're 17 and you're out of country by yourself. So I only attended the Angel Academy for about 7 months.
Interesting.
And I ran out of money because I had to save up my own.
7 months in Florence is a pretty good deal, though.
It's a very good learning experience.
Yeah, that's funny. There's an interesting thread between people going to Florence. We had Kyle Mosher on the show recently.
Oh, yeah.
He spent a little time in Florence. And funny enough, not in the art world, but our accountant, Jason Ackerman, also spent a semester in Florence.
That's right.
When he was in school.
It's an incredible city, very inspiring.
Yeah.
And at the time I went, there weren't any other small ateliers or colleges that taught classical painting and drawing.
Gotcha.
So it was my only option. This was pre-major internet, so I got lucky to even find that. But now you can get classical, academic education almost anywhere in the world now.
Right. And after that, you also studied in Norway, right? Under the artist Odd Nerdrum?
Yes, that's correct. Odd Nerdrum. I studied in Norway. There was a gap where I went and worked for a gallery in Toronto, outside of Toronto in the wine escarpment. And from there, I applied to go study with him. It was basically writing handwritten letters and sending him drawings. And eventually got invited to go study with him in Norway over about 3 months over a summer.
Wow.
on the coast at his farm there,
Wow.
which was a very intense experience. If
Yeah.
anybody knows his work, you can judge his personality by his work. He's a little weird.
So you can see the jump, though, from where you went from academic painting in Florence. I'm assuming you're working in oil painting and things like that type of medium, to the work that he does, which is, I mean, you see the influence of sort of the Renaissance style oil painting, but a different take on it.
Yes. His work still puts a lot of emphasis on traditional techniques,
Right.
but more on an experimental level.
Yeah.
His odds key person of influence is Rembrandt in his work. So it's a lot of building of texture and building up and breaking down of the surface of the painting. It's not a traditional approach that you might get sort of the way I studied in the French academic method.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really fascinating. You're working in such what feels like a very modern job. You know, painting. Well, I say you do other things other than painting murals, but when you focus on that, it seems like a very modern job experience. However, to get there, you went through this very academic process, studying under a master, sort of apprentice style. That style of learning has been around for thousands of years. Whereas today, how do you think that benefited you as compared to, say, somebody who they look people up online, they find inspiration online, they kind of teach themselves a little bit, and they know enough to get by?
Well, I'd say that I was lucky to go the course that I did. I've never seen myself as an artist, so to speak. I've always seen myself more as a craftsman. And the education that I went through was more of like would be more equivalent to an apprenticeship or a trade school, where you're learning a very specific skill set.
Yeah.
But the creativity and the artistry side of it is not emphasized whatsoever.
Gotcha.
But so those skill sets could be applied to whether I wanted to be an abstract painter or a realist painter. All of that sort of buildup allows me to do anything that I want, but the creativity kind of has to build from the individual as opposed to being indoctrinated into the way certain styles you'll see coming out of, say, like SCAD. You can tell when somebody's gone to SCAD. You can tell when somebody's gone to a specific art school. You can even see that in the academic world.
Interesting.
But the creativity was never a primary force. So I was able to approach things like a job, keep things very, very straightforward and enumerated to make sure that efficiency was key, and then I let the creativity come afterwards.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
How did you sort of land on, because I feel like you have a certain kind of style and like things that you do a lot of kind of recurring themes. I'm just curious over time how you sort of went to...
How did you end up landing on where you are now?
That's a good question. It was when I pursue my work, it's usually based on an emotional context over an intentional stylistic context. The stylistic side of things came about primarily because clients like certain things, and you end up getting told to play your old album a few times.
Gotcha.
I'd say that I probably have 3 different subsets within what I do. For me, like I said, it's more of an emotional context first and foremost, so I'm always aiming to create compositions and designs that lean themselves towards a more calming and centered sort of feel. I get a lot of influence from icon paintings, sort of like the Catholic tradition of those things. While I'm not necessarily a religious person, I really enjoy the structure and just a calm center that comes from that sort of design aesthetic. But the rest that you see in my work, bold colors, there's absolute juxtaposition to this very somber sort of centered concepts. Those have been to find a reasonable balance between my classical upbringing and my need for a human element and a very structured building of my work to complement a more contemporary aesthetic that the average person is looking for. So I'm bringing the past into the future and sending the future back to the past all at once.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that even answered your question.
Sort of.
Kind of, yeah, I think so.
I mean, there's a reason those icons have lasted, is because people, it says something to someone. You know, people feel something.
Yeah,
So,
I think that they imbue a very human element to things, you know, even while they're, whether it be a saint or a martyr or what have you, they have an elevated sense of, I guess you could call it spirituality, but we're still drawn to that because we can relate to the image that we're seeing.
Sure. And you're also thinking of a story. You know, you're seeing the person, you're thinking of everything that happened with that person, if it's a martyr, a saint, or something like that.
Yes, and it's a very narrative driven, as opposed to, say, a purely abstract piece, which I have done purely abstract pieces for more corporate applications.
Sure.
But for my personal work, you'll always see a figurative element.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Seems like portraiture is very strong in your work.
Well, one just stylistic follow-up question really fast. Yeah. With you're working on a mural now, kind of commemorating Vernon Grant in downtown Rock Hill. It seems like you're doing, from what I've seen, sort of in his style a little bit, that kind of illustration and using some of his kind of characters and different things in there. How is it working kind of in his style?
Well, that's a good point to bring this up. I actually did not design this piece.
Interesting. Okay.
You'll see a lot. This came about a lot during the pandemic, when artists couldn't travel to do their work. It would be designed and then sent out to other artists to execute because these artists couldn't travel. In this instance, it was designed by Jill Prather, an artist out of New York. She does restoration work primarily, and she's restored some of Vernon Grant's pieces for the museum down here.
Okay.
So she designed it because she's most familiar with his work and his style. But she doesn't have any background in murals. And since I have a good rapport with the city down here, I was reached out to see if I could execute it. So for me, I've definitely had to make some adjustments to fit into Vernon Grant's style in the way that Jill Prather has designed this.
Right.
But for me, it's almost like an academic exercise, learning to copy someone else.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty enjoyable. You learn to humble yourself. And like I said, I see myself as a craftsman, not as an artist. So this really doesn't hurt my ego at all. You aren't going to see it on my website.
Yeah.
But it's a skill set that I can apply to be of aid to someone else still within an artistic genre.
Right. That's interesting.
Very cool.
It's not very common for you to execute someone else's design. Is this the first time you've done that?
This is the very first time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I was trying to, I'll be honest, I was trying to find somebody else, but everybody else is booked at this time. And the city was sort of in a bind.
Hey.
They needed it executed.
It's a great
quick.
wall. It looks great. It's a great location. The style is wonderful. And, you said your dad was an illustrator. So is that a carryover between styles there and the type of work that he did? Or is that?
It's funny that you mentioned that. When I think back, because I have his old portfolio, and he has a lot of these character-driven illustrations in his portfolio. Some that I think of are like rabbits and deer sitting around, his version of dogs playing poker.
Oh, funny.
But he's got a few illustrations like that where he's toyed around with like this concept of nature being built in.
Okay.
So,
similar style.
Pretty similar,
Nice.
Because, I mean, I guess they all he sort of grew up in the era of Vernon Grant, maybe on the tail
sort
end.
Of Rockwell.
And Rockwell, I was going to definitely mention Rockwell. All that sort of was incredibly impactful for his generation, especially considering like Vernon Grant and Rockwell, were kicking it there for a little bit.
Yeah, sort of Saturday Evening Post type folks.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's your favorite medium? What do you like working with the most? Do you still prefer like regular painting as well with a brush and oil, or do you prefer the spray can these days?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I have confession. I haven't painted an oil piece in 6 years since I started painting murals.
Gotcha.
It's different. I really enjoy oil painting. It's a different process. It's slower. It's much more introspective. While mural painting is much more visceral in the moment and move fast.
Yeah.
So they both have their pros and cons. But the major reason why I haven't gone back to painting oil paintings is honestly the business structure is a horrible one.
Yeah.
To be
a traditional artist.
Traditional artist, you have to create something and then hope that it will sell.
Right.
Unlike with murals, you are commissioned and you get money up front. It just makes sense to not do those work in the old medium.
Right.
And like I said, murals are incredibly visceral. You're physically active.
Mm-hmm.
You're often outdoors. You get to interact with the public.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not. You don't have to hole yourself up in a dark room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So that's interesting. Probably particularly works for you since you said you see yourself more of a craftsman. Whereas, I don't know, if you saw it differently, you may take more of a personal slight to any sort of change in the work or anything like that. How is that? What is the process like? So you get a job and you say, here's my idea. Mm-hmm. Do most people say, great, do it? Or is it, could you add something? Could you add this little piece of branding to it? Could you add something like that?
It's a little bit of both. So I definitely, even before starting a project, I make sure that I have this discussion with the client of what they're looking to achieve. Now, definitely when I was starting my career, I definitely had to do a lot of branded work. And as my resume built and my name became much more national and international, it's been more and more that a client will reach out to me specifically for my style of work and without branding attached.
Gotcha.
But it all depends. I start from beginning to end. And yes, with a corporate client, more often than not, I'm having to do edits back and forth.
Yeah.
And having to perhaps skew palettes towards color palettes towards their brand colors, things like that. But there's usually a happy medium in between. And I actually really enjoy working with clients where there is sort of a back and forth push-pull, because at least I am guilty of getting overexcited and taking my concepts to the extreme.
Gotcha.
Where they're just obnoxious and unbalanced, and I didn't even think about, I'm just trying to do the craziest, coolest thing possible, and you need somebody to rein you back in, be like, no, this is for McDonald's, buddy.
Yeah.
When you talk about working with businesses or clients, what is the process like for you right now? How what's your ideal schedule? Are you shooting for a couple a month? Is it or one a month, or what kind of what are you shooting for, and how far advanced do you really try to book these things? What
I'm shooting for and what I'm doing are very different.
Okay.
I'm currently booked out through Q2 of next year. I don't necessarily like being that busy, but I do come from a what we call a background of empty fridge syndrome. So when you grow up being a poor artist and you finally get successful, it doesn't stop you from that mentality that the next job might not come. So I have a talent for taking on more than I probably should, but more often than not these days I've been able to choose my jobs more selectively and go about it that way. But no, my ultimate goal is to hole up in the mountains and then wander out maybe 3 times a year to do very selective murals and then go back to my cave.
Maybe you'll get back into oils at that point.
You'll
get back into oils when you're in that cabin in the woods.
Once my rotator cuffs are completely blown out and I'm already hitting that point where things start creaking and falling apart.
What is your take on that? So what is your long-term, I hate to feel like a job interview, what's your long-term plan for this job, Osiris? Could you because it is a physically demanding job. I mean, you're literally up there. You're on buildings, however many stories up in the sun, the hot, the heat, the heat of the summer, the cold of the winter. So what is your process? You generally work with somebody, right? Somebody who's
it depends on the scale.
Yeah.
Lately, I've had the problem of training my apprentices, and then they get too good and they leave me. So I've had to.
You got to get a factory.
I know. I've gotten really good at making my own process very efficient so that I can do pretty much everything by myself.
Okay. Because you're not working with stencils or anything like that. You're still doing, you do kind of the Roning method? What do you refer to it? The where you do like a grid?
Yeah, it depends on the project.
So I do a little bit secret stuff. Is
secret stuff?
No,
yeah.
Talk about your technique.
Talk about it. Yeah. No, this is all very common knowledge within the mural industry. It's within the outside the industry is that it seems very confusing, even though it's not. But I don't have apprentices now, but also because unlike say the Shepherd Ferry piece that's on the side of Mercantile, his process leans itself to having apprentices and doing things very fast and focused, like production line.
Yeah.
But my work, you can't just use stencils. It's heavy on realism.
When you're doing portraits.
Exactly. And it takes a long time to train an apprentice to get to a point where they can at least go and do most of the work, and I'll come back and touch that up. But yes, to come back to how these murals are applied, there are primarily 3 different ways to apply murals. You can use you have your image, and then you can use a digital projector to put it on the wall, go out at night. I personally hate working at night, so I don't use them unless I have to.
It seems like it'd be hard to do the color matching at night.
Well, you don't really use that
You're
at
primarily
night.
doing like the rough outlines.
Yeah, you're getting the outlines. You might posterize an image if you have to get some of these pieces blocked out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I did project the one on the side of the library, this Vernon Grant piece, just because of its scale and how multiple faceted parts of the wall had to link together cleanly. And then the other 2 ways, you can do a traditional grid, scale grid, perhaps 1 inch to 1 foot, clean vertical and horizontal lines. Most of us are pretty familiar with this process. And then the other one, which is my favorite, is called the squiggle grid, because it doesn't require that perfection of foot to foot, inch to inch comparison. You just put a bunch of smattering of random symbols all over your wall. You take a photograph of that wall, and then you have your digital image of your design, which you use your phone or your computer to lay it over that picture of all those squiggly designs and symbols. And then you lower the opacity so that you can see your image and those within the same context.
So as long as you got a bunch of unique characters up there
that
aren't repeating or something
you try to make
it easy.
I always try to do things with like hard angles, squares, stars. And then it makes it easy. So you say, oh, that line goes from squiggle 1 to squiggle 2. It makes things move faster, and it prevents me from having to work at night.
Do you think Michelangelo had the squiggle grid?
He was a pretty hip guy, but I don't think it is. That is one other means of doing murals that I didn't think of, the pounce. Which
pouncing,
pouncing is where you draw an image on big sheets of paper, and nowadays you would use what would be a sewing roller stipple, and to put holes in the paper, and then you would tap chalk through that design onto the wall. That's how traditional frescoes, Michelangelo, would have done his work. And I've done pieces that way, but it's incredibly time consuming, and it's only if you're getting paid by the hour and not by the job.
So you essentially have to create the image twice. You're creating it on paper and then making a permanent version.
It's a bit redundant, but that technique is very important for fresco work because you're working onto wet plaster as opposed to a dry wall.
Gotcha. You think frescoes are going to come back?
I would like to think yes. I've had this conversation with a buddy of mine who's a very tech-centered, artsy guy, and I remember when I was trying to teach myself fresco at the time. I'm like, no, computers will never take over. Boy, was I wrong. His thing to me was, you might as well give up on that because eventually they're just going to have printers that'll run up and down the wall. And I'm like, that's it. No, they won't. Oh man, and
a bricklaying robot kind of thing that goes through and just.
And now they do have it. It's just like a plot printer. So I would like to think that frescoes would come back, but I think we're in such a gimme now culture that to learn the process, it's very intensive. One, you have to go through classical training to learn how to draw in the first place, and then the process of fresco is an entirely different medium that's quickly being lost. And it's expensive to do.
Yeah, it's very permanent though. I mean,
it's very permanent. But I've also learned, though, this might be being a little jaded. Permanence is relative. A lot of people like to think that they want something quality and permanent. But once you give them the price point attached to that permanence, they usually back up pretty fast.
Oh, sure.
So now people are okay with the mural lasting 25, 30 years as opposed to thousands of years because I can't speak for everybody, but it's a gratifying me now type thing.
Right. Well, who knows if the building itself will survive?
Exactly.
Right. Interesting. So, and what do you do? You do have some kind of a protective layer or something on those things, right? Do you typically do some kind of a varnish, or what keeps them? Is there upkeep required for a large scale mural?
So yes, I do put on a varnish, so to speak, clear coat. I typically will use a UV resistant clear coat,
so it doesn't color or discolor.
Exactly, and that's primarily with higher chroma colors like your yellows, your reds. things that are more prone to pinks, things that are prone to fade because of direct sunlight. And it's more important, say you have a piece on a north-facing wall, it's going to be less important than a south-facing wall.
Gotcha.
But I do try to do that for high chroma colors in a piece, and then as a final coat, if necessary, depending on the location, primarily like in larger cities, I'll put an anti-graffiti coat on them.
Oh, interesting.
Which is basically a concrete sealant that cures rock hard, so that if somebody does come in graffiti over it, this is more for like cities like New York or LA. Yeah. If somebody does graffiti over it, you can just take a pressure washer to it and it'll get rid of the graffiti, but it won't destroy any of the painting itself.
Nice. Huh.
Yeah.
That's smart.
That's cool.
Now, you had a unique experience that happened recently.
Yeah, on the subject of permanence.
On the subject of permanence. One of your notable pieces in Noda was recently painted over accidentally.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So what does that feel like when you hear about this? You say, hey, somebody painted over your mural. And it wasn't a graffiti boy. It was a legit painter.
What are the expletives I'm allowed to use? No.
You could say.
It was definitely a gut punch. It was it was good to find out after the fact that it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
But the short and skinny was that this is a building in the Noda Arts District of Charlotte. On the opposite side of the building, there was a advertisement painted by friends of mine for DC Comics. The company that curates these advertisements for multiple businesses hired a subcontracted to a standard painter.
Gotcha.
That wouldn't know a mural from, I don't know, a fuzzy dice.
Yeah.
They through some momentary lapse of judgment, they moved a lift from one side of the building to the other side.
Oh, it was set up in the right spot.
It was set up. They had a photograph of what they were supposed to paint over. They completely just wiped out my mural. And I started getting calls during the middle of the day. I was on the other side of town working on a project. And my heart sunk.
Oh, man.
But we were able to work it out, and through the mural company's insurance, we had to go through it and get it replaced. But we did replace it with slight variations.
So you have completed the redo?
Yeah, I completed the redo. It's along the same theme. It's a very personal piece to the neighborhood. So with the theme of the lotus, which is a quasi-adopted theme for the neighborhood as a symbol of growth and rebirth, because the arts neighborhood Noda has undergone so many changes over the years, and it's constantly fluxing and growing or dying back. So it's an apt image for the space. But luckily we were able to get through it. I did, as a backstory on that, I don't know if the original was a advertisement for Stella Artois.
Okay. Yeah.
That I painted a few summers back with a broken leg. But when that advertising lease ended, I went back and repainted the entire mural. Got rid of all the branding and painted it just for the neighborhood, which also gave me more legal safeties within that under the Visual Artists' Rights Act. Which ended up saving me on this.
Interesting.
So that either it had to be replaced or I would have the ability to take the entire problem to court.
Oh, wow.
Because my visual rights and copyright over that image were protected.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
Wow. That's a Swedish skirt.
How much of this do you have to brush up on to know all the ins and outs, your legal standing and all of this? Because that's one thing I notice you're very much aware of is the business of it. That seems to be very much a necessary part of it.
Yeah, and it's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
Because over the years, it's unfortunately typical. Businesses and brands like to take advantage of creatives because they don't think they know their rights, and they think that we need handouts or exposure bucks. That's the key one, and it's really these brands and companies that need the artists over that. So a big key turning point for me was hearing about the 5 Points lawsuit that happened in New York, which was a big warehouse where artists were allowed to paint legally, and very high up, talented, world-renowned artists had painted this warehouse area. Developer came through and tore it down before tore everything down, whitewashed the entire thing, tore it down, and the artist had filed an injunction because that was illegal, because their work had rights and it was painted for free. So this was a big, you can look up that, artists can also look up the Visual Artist Rights Act. Gotcha. It's a great way to see what your options are if your work is used illegally to sell product or destroyed illegally. Because while you might not own the building, you own the intellectual copyright to that work.
Right. And a big one is like commercials. Commercials using, say, a nice mural as a background for something, and then you find out that they didn't reach out to the artist or something like that. There've been many scenarios like that. You found yourself in a few situations like that, haven't you?
I have. Law and Order up in New York. Even after talking with them, I told them not to use my work in the piece. I told them just put a cover over it. Yeah. They still use my work in the background of one of their episodes, so I had to reach out to their legal team. Fortunately, they were smart enough to not take it all the way to court and just pay me out. Okay. But I mean, this happens a lot. There's a big one was with H&M, the clothing store. Yeah. And the street artist called Revoke. Mm-hmm. And they used his work without permission, and they continue to deny him his visual rights as an artist. So he ended up taking them to court. While at the same time, this went viral all over the street art community. Right. And if you really want to piss some people off who vandalize buildings for fun and tell them that they don't have rights. The amount of H&M stores that got completely blasted.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it is a learning curve, though. I think it's important, not to just go about willy-nilly starting lawsuits everywhere. Right. And I don't do this trying to create adversaries, but it's important that artists know their rights and know when and how to get paid for their intellectual copyright.
Yeah. If there was one big piece of advice that you were trying to give to people who were trying to either break into the art world or mural world, I don't know, what advice would you give, I guess?
For me, what I found to be very important and very game-changing for my career, I'd say if you have the ability and the time, if you're in college or if you can go to a community college and take the time, take business courses. The artsy-fartsy stuff can come later, but if you don't know how to market yourself or create a niche or develop contracts, every artist needs a contract. Do not work without a contract. Just basic nuts and bolts of running a business will put you steps above and beyond any other artist out there. And then with that, as you're thinking about what you want to create as an artist, don't feel forced to come up with who you're going to be as an artist immediately. That's a progression. It's a progression for your entire career. I'm constantly changing and finding things I like, but be aware of who you are as a person and stay true to that, because passion feeds more passion. People, when they see it in you, they're going to support that as well. So be aware of who you are as a person, and then also be very tuned into the market around you and see what other artists aren't doing that you might be able to fill in those gaps or do better than what is the current standard. The amount of artists I know, and I love them to death, they don't have a website, they don't even answer their email, they don't even pick up their phone, and they're wondering why they aren't picking up commissions. Yeah. It's just common sense. So be business savvy, be aware of your brand, and find opportunities where other people aren't taking advantage of that.
Smart. Now, a few other things, little background for you. You also are the founder of the North Carolina Academy of Art. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I founded that, some 8 years ago, I want to say, in NODA. This was before I had started painting murals, and it is a small atelier that teaches French academic drawing and painting techniques, the same way I was taught in Italy, but I wanted to provide the opportunity because there wasn't one here at the time in the Charlotte metro area. Gotcha. So currently I am no longer, I'm just there as a masthead because mural business took over my life, and teaching is...
how do you have more time?
Yeah, I don't, and teaching is exhausting. It's a beautiful thing, but it's exhausting. Yeah. But my first student, Pascal Robert, she took over the school as the director, and then my buddy Mark Gucciardi, who studied at the Florence Academy of Art, he took over as primary instructor. And this school is still in the NODA area. It's in what is now the Can Jam Mural Festival warehouse. Okay. And they still teach academic drawing and painting, and it's an incredible school if you're interested in learning those building blocks and basics.
Fantastic. And you mentioned Can Jam. You talk a little bit about that? About
another side project?
Yeah, another side project. Keeping you busy.
Yeah. Not so much anymore. We've had to put it on pause just because of workload. But I hope to bring it back sooner than later. But Can Jam is a NODA-based mural festival that incorporates over 40 graffiti artists and muralists and street artists from currently all over the U.S. Eventually, I'd like to bring over international acts, people that I've met while I've been on the road.
Nice.
But it's at a warehouse in the NODA Arts District, right across from Amelie's Bakery. That'll be easy for everybody to find.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I love it. And I invite people I've met on the road, people that I'd like to meet, to come in. I think they have distinct styles, everything from up-and-comers to established artists, to create a great little melding. So if you're able to get it by there, enjoy the art.
Awesome. Very fantastic. I think we might take a quick break here and pop back over with a little art game for Osiris.
Yeah.
Right?
Perfect. Did you know that the IRS now requires all tax-exempt organizations to e-file their 990 tax forms? If you need to file a 990, check out expresstaxexempt.com, the quickest and easiest way to e-file your organization's 990 forms. Express Tax Exempt offers interview-style and form-based processes to accommodate 990 experts and newcomers alike. Plus, they make it easy to attach any required schedules, share the return with others in your organization for review, and they even offer live customer support. So go to expresstaxexempt.com now for the easiest 990 e-filing option.
And we're back to play a little game with Osiris. So we're going to pull this game back. It's Ellsworth Kelly or Just a Shape. We previously played with a colleague of yours, Kyle Mosher. This one is slightly different. In this version, it is kind of focused on the idea of AI-generated art. So we're going to show you images of art, and it's either going to be actual artwork or something that Caleb created using an AI bot. So let's see.
Let's bring it on.
Let's see if it can fool you.
It's time for Ellsworth Kelly or Just a Shape, a game where we look at photos and try to tell if they're works of art by famous artists or just random things. What's that? Oh yes, we know you can't see the photos, and this isn't the best game for an audio podcast, and we're sorry. If you'll just please hold your angry comments, we will all get through this together. So there you go.
All right, and we're here. So let's get this thing started.
All right.
What do we have up first, Caleb?
So, again, these are either real works of art by an artist or something that I made using an AI image generator. So that's the first one.
It's a blurry red and blue image.
Well, I'm going to go with, that's art.
Yeah? Looks very much like a Mark Rothko.
It's got some texture to it.
Yeah.
So it could be a canvas.
Is it?
Oh,
it is
yeah,
fake.
it is.
So you literally just typed like fake Mark Rothko, or did you say Mark Rothko piece? Do you recall what you searched?
I think it was like oil painting by Mark Rothko or something like that is the prompt that you give it. You have to give it sort of.
Oh, so it can be a real painting, but it just.
Well, so the computer made this.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's been trained on all sorts of images. Not all artists work. They have to be kind of famous artists for this to figure it out. So the computer came up with this, but it's trained on what Mark Rothko paintings will look like.
Okay, got it.
So
this is not you can't find any image like this in a museum somewhere, but
it's stylistically,
yeah, it's like identical, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Well, before we continue, now here's the big question.
Yeah.
Do I get Carl Castle's voice on my home amp?
We'll figure that out.
Or I'll take one of yours.
You'll get my voice.
Yeah,
okay.
You get Charles. Charles has the good voice, yes, if you win.
I'm going to say that's fake
a sculpture.
Because his work is horrible, but that's really bad.
Who do you think this is?
It's a Koons knockoff.
You're taking a guess that it's a fake Jeff Koons?
Yeah, that is. I mean, I've never seen a balloon dog that
this is like
might have come out of like a coal ash pour off.
This is like balloon dog in Chernobyl.
Yeah. You know what? It could be. It might not be made yet. I can see Jeff Koons going through like some issues later in life, and he starts producing stuff like this.
Do you want to have a session where you're correct? That is a fake Jeff Koons.
All right.
So that's the thing. This is one of the limitations of AI stuff right now, is that it's not very good at recreating, like, it can do like the shape of a human, but if you look at like the eyes, they're kind of off, or hands, it'll have like 6 fingers, or like a dog, it doesn't know how to quite do it right.
All right, what is this? So this looks like a quilt. It is a
Yes.
gridded image.
Lots of colors.
Lots of colors, little square, rectangular shapes.
If I peeled off a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna go with real.
Okay.
I don't know.
Is it real, Caleb?
It is not.
Oh, it's a fake. So what did you type for this one?
This is an Ellsworth Kelly. So, yeah, I think it was something.
He made a
Pretty
living.
departure from Ellsworth Kelly. I mean,
Well, so he did some grid things.
Oh, he did some grid
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sort of the Modrian type grid work.
I felt like it's titled Ellsworth Kelly, so I had to get an Ellsworth Kelly in here
Gotcha.
somewhere. But certain artists, it's hard to get it to quite get their style right. So this one was close. If you look at his, they're all extrememely clean lines, and if you look like perfect grid, and this has.
Well, I'm made for this game because I had no idea who Ellsworth was.
That's fair.
That's what happens when you get stuck in the academic world. You're
Well,
like,
that's where
any realist painters, I can tell you.
Yeah, well, see, I should have, if I talked to you beforehand, I would have gotten some like realist painters in here, but it would have been.
Should have done that. Yeah. That would have been. We've gone more different.
boy.
On
We've
this
gone
one.
more non-representational. Yeah.
Uh-oh. So this is black and white.
It looks
artwork
like
about
a
the size
like
of
a
wall.
leopard print
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
extent on a wall.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's too
So-
pixelated to see whether it's Photoshop.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One hint I'll give you on this one is look at the people. Try and see if you can see
Oh.
anything, spot anything.
Fake.
Yeah.
Fake.
The artwork's pretty close, but yeah, the
It's
people do
fake.
throw it off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
there's
all
no-
I'm seeing, the only thing that would like just a gut is that red dot in between the two on the left. Whether that was
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah,
this lady,
yeah.
it's like her back turned, but it's like the front of her head is turned to the left. Like, do you see how that's?
Yeah.
The perspective is off. So again, people are kind of a problem.
So your job will be safe with portrait painting with the AI. when
For
AI
now, at
takes
least.
over.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say fake on this one.
Yeah, you're gonna say fake?
I mean,
It's
is it? Yeah. See, you never know with that genre of pop art.
Yeah.
Because it became so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And within site variables, but it's just. Watch me. It's not good enough to be real, but watch it be real.
no, you're right.
It's fake.
Okay.
It's good.
It's a fake Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. It's not clean enough. They didn't do
And they would have been that print, that dot
halftone.
print.
Yeah,
Halftone,
yeah.
which I could not get it to reproduce for the life of me. I was trying so hard to get that in there, and I couldn't.
Okay.
Ooh.
This is more geometric, non-wrap.
It doesn't seem too textured or clean,
Hmm.
so I would push it to be digital. I mean, the composition's honestly not too bad. But I'm still gonna. I don't even know at this point. I'm gonna. Do I say?
Are we making you
You know,
uncomfortable?
my gut says real, even though it's fake, isn't it?
It's
fake. All of these are fake. There is no.
there has been a trend so far.
like Frank Stella. What's this one?
So that's what you told it, Frank Stella?
Yeah, this one took a while. Just running through iterations until it gave me something that was. This one's very similar to the fake Kusama we saw earlier, kind of a leopard printy type thing. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm realizing how similar it looks, just without the people in the front. So,
Real. Make a dress out of it, Cruella de Vil.
yeah, you totally could. No, this one's fake.
Oh my god.
Christopher Wool. It's not super close to Christopher Wool. Some of these names, admittedly, I didn't know ahead of time either. So
It's Christopher Nagahide.
Right. This one. It's a black and white.
Trying to do an Ansel
landscape.
Adams type
Yeah,
thing.
it definitely looks that way.
Wow. To AI that, I'm gonna go with real.
This
God,
one's
stop
fake.
this. I don't trust the world anymore.
I know. This one was
so
the
that
one.
one shocked me too. I was like, that looks the most realistic of all.
Yeah,
these
this is
things.
a beautiful landscape. They even got the
It looks just like his
sfumato.
work of, I don't know, Yosemite or something like that. I mean,
Yeah, it's this one. This one really blew me away because.
So you're telling me like you can't find this. You can't find this if you did a Google image search of this. You're not going to find that tree. You're not going to find those mountains.
You can't go hiking anywhere and find
You can't.
No. This is fantasy world.
I give up.
Yeah.
I'm going to go be an
Made
accountant.
So that's what I was saying off air. That some of these are upsettingly good. It's like.
So another one, very non-rep.
I'm going to say real on this one.
Feels almost like de Kooning or early Pollock.
It's fake.
Did you even try to find any real ones?
I did. It was part of the bit here was that I was just gonna
just do nothing but fakes. Is there any real work left?
There's only a couple more. We're almost done.
Okay.
We're almost done.
So the next one's a dot piece. A lot of black dots, some colored dots.
Anybody got a coin?
Flip it. Your guess is about as good as anybody's.
Yeah. I mean, I might as well be like the listeners and just close my eyes.
Yeah, fair.
These are ridiculously convincing.
Yeah, this one.
I'm going to go real again with this one.
Okay. Well, so this one's not real. This one's also fake. where this one.
I know I'm going to get duped. The second I say fake, it's going to be, oh, that's legit original.
Damien Hirst.
Yeah, my favorite.
Yeah, but where some of the is that a joke?
Let's have a riff. I think you want to talk about Damien Hirst and Jeff Koons a little bit. I think you're really.
I'm sorry. I didn't see any formaldehyde in this piece. And
where this one falls apart a little bit. There's some little. If you look at like places here where it's like doing some weird stuff.
Yeah,
with,
they sort of tried to make.
Well,
it
exactly.
Look,
I saw it falling apart, so I figured it must be a real Damien Hirst. It's drooping just like a shark. Is that like a early Basquiat?
Does have that
it
sort
does
of
have that
feel.
kind of look, yeah.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not. I feel tricked.
We give up.
Give up. Okay, this one's fake.
What were the prompts on?
Jasper Johns.
Okay,
It's
He did
not
have some work
great.
like that. It's not highly representational for his.
No.
I would not have pulled Jasper Johns for that for some reason.
This was
Too
the
bold.
closest I could get after like
A
Gotcha.
few iterations. Okay.
10 or 15 tries trying to get it to do something. And it's the last one. This is the last one. So we're looking at like a bay of windows with kind of something on the floor there.
Everything's been fake so far, right?
Correct.
You're horrible. Because I want to say real on this so bad.
Do you have any hope?
No.
Do you like it?
You've ruined my faith. Faith in anything being done by hand anymore. I'm signing in my resignation. All right. Endless optimism. Let's go with real.
It is. One real one.
It's another Felix Gonzalez Torres. So those are candy wrappers on the floor.
Oh,
candy.
a very aptly placed name. The title of this piece is Placebo. So just enough to get me by on fake hope. Thanks. I don't know if you did that intentionally.
I did not. That's good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for playing.
That was fun.
I think you won the voice of Charles on your.
You won the voice of
Charles. Yes.
You definitely won. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
if you weren't aware of what AI can do, this is.
At least they haven't been able to execute the labor as well. So yet.
Yeah.
All right,
So
I demand realism next time.
Okay.
But you have to
You
do
got
that. Next abstract painter interview,
gotcha.
all realism. And then you've got to do that one. I forget who painted it, but it's a beautiful lady reclined, and she's got cupids around her, but they're holding up a bubble blower to her butt. I don't know if you've seen this. It's a real piece, and there are cupids behind this
Is
classic.
it a new piece or an old piece?
No, it's
from
ancient. Like the 1600s
Oh wow.
or
Okay.
later.
Okay. Gotcha.
I wish I could think of the name of the artist, but yes, it is a real thing, and there are these beautifully classically painted, and it's little cupids holding a bubble blower behind a lady's butt, and she's farting
Caleb
bubbles.
can make an AI version of that.
We keep it high class. Keep it high class.
Keep it high class. Yeah, I have a feeling that you'd be able to tell much more clearly with realism on these.
Well, modernism and abstract work has always been a conundrum for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, how did you pull this off? Like it's the biggest trick in the book.
Well, I mean, when we pulled up like the Hearst and the Coons, you did seem to have a bit of animosity in your voice. What is it? What is it about Hearst? Because last time we did this with Kyle, and he was very much of the idea that like everything's art. I like everything can be art. And I feel like you might be a little bit more in the discerning element.
I think that everything can be art, but not everything can be craft. I think that by the very definition of art, I mean, at least in the modern sense, it's changed over time. Art used to mean craft or techne,
right?
In Greek, but it's altered over time after Hegel and Kant took over the philosophy of it to be something very abstract and nebulous. So everything is art.
So do you not care for Catalan? The banana on the wall guy.
I love it.
You like it?
I love it because that is the epitome of you pay me.
Yeah.
It is when you're looking at money laundering and duping the rich.
Right.
That is just beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most of the modern art world, this is just obviously an opinion, I think most of the modern art world is a beautiful joke on those with money. And then when it's not a beautiful joke on them, it's just a tool for laundering copious amounts of money. And I love that piece. I love it. I even put a banana on one of my murals immediately after it happened. Yeah. Nice. And had a buddy of mine, we did a great little back and forth stunt of stealing each other's bananas. With stencil spray.
That's funny.
Nice.
That's funny. So you're down with the banana on the wall. Not so crazy about Coons and Hearst?
Not so much Coons and Hearst. I just think it's...
Is it the factory element that bothers you? Or is the content?
I think it's the content. I think it's, it's that shock for the sake of shock thing.
Mm-hmm. Referring to like Hearst's animals?
Yeah, Hearst animals, him, making canvases out of, endangered butterflies.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem. I do have a problem with Hearst on other points because he hires classically trained painters to paint a lot of his works, and they get paid They get paid like $20 an hour to do what he couldn't do. He never could do.
Create a masterpiece.
Yeah, like people out of the Grand Central Atelier that are brilliant craftsmen have been hired by him. And I want to say like 3-4 years ago, he did a series of they look like classical paintings and then just altered something within it to make it poppy and kitsch. And all those were painted by people who actually went through training like I did.
Yeah. Well, I know Koons had his gazing ball series, which were essentially masterpieces with like a little mirror ball or something in front of it. Yeah. And it's all painstakingly created stuff that you couldn't do on your own, realistically.
Yeah, but, and I have no problem with the warehouse.
So you're okay with the warehouse?
Oh, absolutely. If I could get to the point, my goal is to get to the point where I'm outsourcing the majority of my work. I mean, people have got to take away that lone wolf idea of what being an artist is. This is a business.
Yeah.
And if there's a product that the public wants and you find out the most efficient way to make it.
Right.
I mean, that's it.
I mean, you look at the greats over the years; they had similar setups.
Yeah, same thing with classical ateliers. Like you got Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all those Titian. I mean, most of the stuff was not painted by Rembrandt or Titian.
Right.
They would come in and do the final touches, but no, it was warehouse, factory type work.
Gotcha.
And I would love all the slave labor. So all you young artists who want to get paid $6 an hour, I will sign it off. Job experience.
Come work at the Rain factory.
Yeah.
All right. Making it rain. All right. Awesome. Cool. Well, we appreciate you stopping by. It's been a pleasure. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to talk about? Promote future work coming up?
Not a whole bunch. I am staying local here. I guess one coming up is for Heist Barrel Arts.
Okay.
I, along with 3 other artists, are doing limited edition designs for their barrel-aged beers that they're coming out with. Very limited runs of like 300 bottles per beer. And
Nice.
starting off with John Hairston, amazing artist up in Charlotte. His will be debuting on the 28th of this month.
Okay.
And it'll be rolling through the winter into the spring.
Okay,
Keep an eye out for that.
So
and-
some custom bottles coming out.
Yep.
Okay.
Other than that, it's just going to be murals upon murals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, keep doing what you're doing. We're impressed, and well, come around and talk to us again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for joining us. Stick around next week and see what we talk about on the Bandit Room. Be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe.
The Bandit Room is a production of Span Enterprises, located in sunny Rock Hill, South Carolina. We've been developing, supporting, and growing successful IRS e-filing and business management solutions since 2010. Go to spanenterprises.com now to learn more. The views and opinions expressed in the Bandit Room are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect or state the opinions of Span Enterprises. No information should be considered as tax, legal, or other professional advice.